All right, here we go. I want to get YouTube set up so those who are not on Zoom can join in. All right, now we're good to go. Gotta love technology. You can tell I'm a little rusty on these webinars. So grab a piece of paper and a pen because we're going to be working through how to set your goals, basically, and working through how to prioritize what to be working on this year and deciding, you know, what's the best way to make sure that I can make this happen. So one, we are really excited to be able to bring this to you guys. And if you have any questions along the way, I'm not able to see them in the chat right now, but feel free to put your questions in the chat so that way I can get to them at the end of everything. So one, we're going to talk about obviously mostly health and fitness related goals. And with that, I want you to take inventory of a few different things. So I'll kind of pause a little bit throughout because I want you to actually write these down and think through them. So one, your nutrition and hydration. Where do you feel like you stand with that? Do you feel like you could use some work in that area? Do you want to work on that area for this year? So nutrition and hydration is kind of category number one that I want you to write down. Then number two is physical activity. So that includes not just your exercise and fitness routine, but also daily movements. You know, how do you feel like your exercise routine is doing, or where would you maybe want to work on with that? And we'll get into more detail with all of this in a second, but I just want you writing down these different categories and start kind of brainstorming how you feel about each of these topics. So when it comes to physical activity, both day to day as well as your actual like fitness routine. So next is sleep habits. Write down sleep. Kind of be thinking about how do you feel about your current sleep patterns? Is it an area that needs work or that you want to improve upon? Next is your stress level and mental wellness. So those are kind of one in the same category. How do you feel like your stress level or mental wellness has been doing? It hasn't exactly been the most stress-free of years, both for 2020 and, you know, this year is off to an interesting start as well. So where do you feel like your stress level falls in all of that? And then lastly, your work-life balance. You know, thinking about, and you can kind of think of that in terms too of, you know, maybe you're having to prioritize kids a little bit more with them doing schooling from home and things like that. So when you think work-life balance, kind of think of that balance overall with everything you have going on, not necessarily just with work. So now with that list, I want you to rank them in order of importance or priority for you. So when you look at that list of nutrition slash hydration, physical activity, your sleep habits, stress level, and work-life balance. And of course, there is always a little bit of overlap between these. But between those 5 categories, rank them in order 1 through 5 of where you want to focus your goals, or kind of prioritize your goals, I should say, for the year. What's most important to you? And I want you to think about why it's important. So this is why I want you writing it down. Obviously, some of this stuff is going to take a little more time to think through. And so that's why it's good to take some notes along the way. And this recording will be available later, that if you're not able to catch everything, you can come back and watch this. But think about, why are each of these categories important to you? Why are some more important than others? So my example, kind of my big thing for 2021, that was a 2020 goal, but unfortunately the race I was wanting to do got canceled. So I was supposed to go to Berlin to run the Berlin Marathon. It was my big goal for 2020, and unfortunately had to be put on the back burner because they put it off to this year. So for 2021, that is my big goal. So then, you know, in this example, you then want to do, if any of you are familiar with kind of the why, asking the why questions, you know, I would say shoot for at least 3 whys for kind of each of your top 2 categories. So for me, again, it falls into the physical activity category, and kind of the overarching thing I want to do or want to work on is being able to run the Berlin Marathon. And we'll talk about getting really nitpicky on how you word your goals later on. But why do I want to do that? Well, to beat my best time. I'd kind of planned on trying to run really hard in Berlin, and it's just something that I wanted to do. Well, why do I want to do that? To challenge myself in training, pushing myself harder, being able to meet that goal, but in a way that I don't get injured. You know, it's always a challenge to balance that, like pushing yourself to get more, to get a higher fitness level, but not to the point of getting injured. So I want to challenge myself in that way. It's something that I've never done before. And so why do I want to do that? Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to being able to walk the walk of, I'm a PT. I love working with runners, especially higher level runners. And so being able to be well versed and have been through a harder training program to hopefully run a fast marathon basically gives me street cred. You know, I want to be able to walk the walk of the people I get to work with, you know, and like I said, just challenging it. So for each of your, I would say pick your top 2 for now. I think it is helpful to go through each of these areas and kind of go through this why if you want to work on it. But pick your top 1, maybe top 2, and go through that why progression for yourself. So for you, maybe it's drink more water. Why do you want to drink more water? Oh, well, it's good for me. Well, why do you feel that way? Or why is it important to you? I think that's the most important piece, is getting to, oh, well, not just it's good for my health and I know that's what I should be doing. Why is that important to you? Why is it important to you to be healthier, to have a better stress level? Like, actually think about what that means for your life. Does that mean, you know, if your stress level improves, you feel like your mood will improve and that's going to help your marriage or help your relationship with your kids? Things like that. Like, really get to the nitty gritty of what is motivating you to make this change or making this goal. So once you rank 1 to 5 these topics, so you know which one is going to be your priority for the year, then I want you to, on a scale of 0 to 10 for each area, rank how ready you are to make a change in each of these areas. So, you know, just because, I'll use my example of running a marathon. You know, I could say that's my number 1 in importance, but if I'm not ready to make a change in my training, then, you know, that those don't really mesh. And we'll talk about how to work through some of those barriers, but we're just taking this time, taking this inventory to be honest with ourselves about where we actually stand on the goals that we've maybe been floating around in our head, but haven't necessarily written down yet, because we're only 2 weeks into the year now. Actually getting intentional about writing them down and being honest with ourselves about how ready am I to actually implement this and make a change. So far, you have your 5 topics. You should have ranked those 5 in order of importance. And then for each of those 5, on a scale of 0 to 10, rank them and say, 0 is I'm not ready to make a change in this area at all, or 10, I'm completely ready. I'm ready to start making that change today after this webinar. So rank those 0 to 10, each of them, how ready you feel to change in each area. And again, I can't see your questions right now, but if anything comes up, put them in the chat as we go, and I will get to them at the end. So next, for your top 2 areas, I want you to think about what's going to help me get closer to a 10. If you're not already at a 10, and really you can do this for all 5 areas, but for the purpose of this webinar, I want to keep it a little bit more focused. So in focusing on your top 2, if you're not at a 10, what's it going to take to get you closer to that 10, meaning completely ready to make a change? Does it mean more planning, making a commitment, just again, writing it down? Is that going to help you? Do you need family or friend support, seeking outside assistance, say like a coach or a trainer, depending on what the goal is, nutritionist, just learning more information about it? Maybe you have this idea of what your goal is, but you know, maybe it's not something you're super familiar with and you haven't taken the time to do the research on it. But once you do that research, you'll feel more ready to implement it or make that change. Or is there something else? Like, what would help you feel more ready to make a change in this area? Again, we're just taking the time to sit down, do an exercise, and really think through this stuff. you can kind of think of it as we're journaling together right now, because that's, like I said, I want you writing this down. And if you feel like you need more time to think about each of these things, that is totally fine. I know I need a little bit of time when it comes to this stuff, but I at least want you basically writing down these prompts, if you will, of how to think about when you really sit down to seriously look at what you want to prioritize, what your goals are, things like that. These are the steps I want you thinking through it, because it's going to make it more manageable and doable to make those changes and to implement these things. So I'm going to kind of review each time as we go through, because I want to make sure that you're not missing these things. You're taking an inventory of your nutrition and hydration, physical activity, sleep habits, stress level / mental health or mental wellness. I kind of lump those together, and then work-life balance. From there, ranking those 5 things in order of priority. So you should have 1 through 5 on those, on, what is the most important thing of these to make a change right now. And then also, how ready do I feel to make a change in each of those areas? And that's on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 is I'm not ready at all to make a change, or 10 is I'm ready, let's go right now. And then for each area, thinking about what will help me get closer to that 10. What can I do to make me more ready? Is it more planning, writing it down, telling a friend, having a friend help me, getting a coach, whatever it is? Think through what's going to help you make this happen, basically. So next, think about what the benefits of making this change would be. What is drinking water more going to do for you? Is it, you're looking for the improved health? You're looking to feel better and have more energy? It's going to make you feel more confident? Or is it more specific benefits? Maybe because you don't hydrate well, you feel like you can't go on a hike with friends because you get a headache or you get worn out, and hydration will help with that. Whatever it is. This is a very random example, but, think of, I want you to really be real with yourself and think about those specific activities for you as to what that benefit would be. So, if you're dealing with back pain and your goal is, it kind of falls under the physical activity, I would say, if you're dealing with pain, specific benefits of helping get out of pain would be, I can chase my kids around and feel like I need to do the things I want to be able to do without fear of hurting myself, or going for that hike with friends and feeling like I have the energy to do it and I'm not going to be afraid of hurting myself. Things like that. So not just the kind of global level, oh, it'll improve my health if I'm able to walk more, or I'll feel better, have more energy. Like, think of the specific things that are really meaningful to you. So again, I would like you to do it for each of those areas, but at the very least, your top 1 or 2 of what are the big benefits for you of making a change there. And then next, we're going to work through, what are your barriers? What has been holding you back? I think a lot of times when we set goals, it's something that we've maybe wanted to or tried to make a change in the past, but maybe didn't quite get there or didn't make it happen. And what were some of the things that went into that? Why did you feel held back in not being able to make that goal happen last year, if it was the same kind of goal? So what are the barriers? Is it, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy? Do you feel like you lack resources or lacking knowledge? You don't have any social support, financial support, you don't know where to start? Like, what is it that's holding you back? Again, be honest with yourself. Really think about, in each of those areas, what's holding you back. Because it's going to be having that awareness of why this is so important to you, keeping in mind the benefits of making the change, and what your barriers are, the things that are going to pop up that are going to try to derail you from your 2021 goals. Basically anticipating those barriers and knowing where you have challenges with this is going to be huge. So starting there before you even think about writing out what your goals actually are, I think is really helpful, and kind of having an idea of making it more specific and what's going to be most meaningful for you to start off with. Yeah, obviously you can have multiple goals, I think it's good to do that, but again, ranking them in order of importance. And it doesn't just have to be these 5 categories. If it's like, I want to be able to read 12 books a year and it's once a month, great. And we'll talk about how to make that specific. So it doesn't just have to be in those areas, but today we're focusing on health and fitness goals. So that's why I picked those 5 areas to work on. But if there's other random things, like I want to be able to read more and whatever, like I said, other things are important to you, that's where you want to start. So now we're going to get into something that I think we've all, in some capacity or another, heard of SMART goals. Whether you're really familiar with them or not, we're going to go through it. And like I said, ideally, it'd be good if you kind of take this time while you're here listening to me to actually write your goals out. But if you feel like you need a little more time to think through everything, that's totally fine as well. But at least be making notes for yourself of how to write them. Obviously we'll have a blog posted later on, but to be able to spend time, don't sit on this, don't save this exercise for next week, because it's never going to get done. So if you're not doing it right now with me, then as soon as you get off this webinar, schedule a time later today. If it has to be tomorrow, fine, tomorrow, depending on time, but actually put it in your calendar, put that time aside to sit here and work on these goals. Don't put it off. And that's usually the helpful thing, is putting it in your calendar. So one, when it comes to your actually setting your SMART goals, like I said, you're going to pick for this exercise, especially pick your top 1 to 2 goals, or sorry, 1 to 2 areas to start with, where you are most ready for a change. And I'll leave it up to you of, if you feel like there was a mismatch between areas you felt like you were most ready to change versus maybe what's most important to you. I'm inclined to say start with the goals that you're most ready to make a change, because you're going to get wins there, versus if it's like, I want to lose X amount of pounds, but I'm scared for XYZ reasons. These are my barriers, and I'm not ready to make that change yet. But you have another area that you set a goal that seems a little more attainable, then start there. It doesn't, like, you can have big goals, but you also don't want to get discouraged by starting with a goal that you're not going to be able to meet, or that is more challenging, so it's going to end up putting you off. So you can work on the goals, obviously, that are most important to you. But if there was a big discrepancy between what you feel most ready to make a change in and what's most important to you, if it were down to those 2, I would say start with where you feel like it's easiest to make a change. So maybe pick one of those and pick one that's important to you. So I'll leave it up to you guys. If you have any questions about that, again, we'll get to them at the end. So be putting things in the chat as needed. So 1, for SMART goals, it's an acronym. Not only is it smart to set goals, but it's a specific kind of goal setting technique. So the S stands for specific. So be specific. What exactly do you want to achieve? So for me, me being specific with my Berlin Marathon goal would be, I want to run the Berlin Marathon. It's in September. I want to run the Berlin Marathon in September in under 3:15. So that kind of combines the next part of this, which is measurable. So the M stands for measurable. How much or how many? So for me, the measurable aspect of it is the time. So the 3:15, 3:10 is kind of a secondary goal. 3:15 marathon, that is making it measurable. Like, that's the number I know I want to hit. And I have a very specific goal of it's that race, not just, I'm not setting a goal of, oh, in 2021, I want to run a marathon and I don't know when or which one. Like, you want to have that idea. It doesn't have to be a race, but in the case of drinking water, it's the specifics of, I want to drink X amount of ounces of water a day. So that's both measurable, and then kind of getting specific with, it's drinking water and not just like, I want to drink more. That would be kind of the basic, like if you're on a very surface level writing a goal, I want to drink more water. Okay, well, that's not super specific, you know, the goal is I want to drink more water. But say, you know, the formula of, what is it, half your body weight in ounces is kind of the recommended amount. So that would be the measurable piece of it, is how much. Or if it's, I want to eat more vegetables, or sorry, let me back up. So saying like, I want to eat healthier, that's kind of an overarching, very non-specific goal. So rather than saying I want to eat healthier, say I want to eat more vegetables. And then to make that measurable, so now we're in the M, so S is the specific, and then measurable. I want to eat at least 800 grams of fruit and vegetables, fruit and or vegetables a day. Or I want to eat 1 to 2 servings of fruit or veggies at each meal. So both of those are measurable in different ways. So however you want to write it, you know, depending on what your goals are, you know, that's how you can break it down. So making that measurable. So give it a number in some way, whether it's number of times a day, number of hours you're sleeping, amount of veggies that you're eating a day, amount of water that you're drinking, things like that. So get specific on what your goal is and then make it measurable. So the next piece of it, the A, and we're working through the SMART acronym, the A is attainable or achievable, depending on, you know, it's kind of written differently depending on where you've read about SMART goals, but basically, is it attainable? Is it achievable? Is this goal even possible to achieve? If I were to say, I want to run a 2:30 marathon, maybe in some alternate universe that's possible, but that in no way feels achievable for my fitness level. And the amount of time I can realistically dedicate to training, I don't know that I would ever get there physiologically. So you don't want to set this big off the charts goal. It's good to dream big and have big goals, but it can also seem insurmountable and like you could never get there. And it, you know, you want to meet your goals. So if anything, if you have that big, I don't want to say off the wall goal, but that maybe seems just like borderline out of reach, unattainable, what might be helpful is to set a shorter term goal that's a little bit more reachable. So if you're trying to lose weight and you want to lose 60 pounds or whatever, however many pounds, but it seems like, God, I've never lost that much weight before. I don't know how to do that. And it just seems like you have no idea how you're going to get there, or it just seems really overwhelming. Then start small. You know, I want to be able to lose 10 pounds in 2 or 3 months, whatever. However you want to break it up, that doesn't seem as scary, that's still achievable. Don't say 10 pounds in a week. Be realistic, which we'll get to next. But is it attainable? So what I like about this part is, you know, then potentially setting a shorter term goal with a smaller amount. So if we're using the veggies example of I want to eat 800 grams of fruits or veggies a day, you know, maybe start with 400 over the next 2 months, and then working your way up to 800 grams. So setting something that's a little more achievable and then working your way up towards that higher amount, faster race time, bigger weight loss, you know, whatever it is. Give yourself an intermediate SMART goal to get to that bigger goal that maybe seems a little unattainable now, but on a grand scheme, you know, in a goal for a year, it's not unrealistic, but I think it's helpful to set a smaller goal that's more short-term attainable. So next is the R, so relevant or realistic. Is this goal or how is this goal relevant to you? And also, is it realistic? So the goal takes into consideration what's going on in your life right now. So if you say, my goal is to sleep 9 hours a night, but you have a 1-month-old at home, okay, that maybe doesn't apply to your life as well right now, and it's going to be tough to meet, which doesn't mean it can't be a goal, but just really think about how it fits into your day or into your life at this point. So, you know, and this falls into what we talked about earlier of why is this important to me? Why is it relevant to me? You know, this is where you really consider, am I just writing a goal to have a goal. Why is this meaningful to me to make this change? So thinking about that relevance for you, and then also how it's realistic to apply it to your life. Does your work-life schedule allow for the goal you've set for yourself, whether maybe physical activity or whatever it is? But how can you best structure your goal to fit your current life situation? So it's not necessarily a matter of throwing that one out the window if you don't feel like you're in an ideal situation, so much as maybe I need to restructure it a little bit. So in the case of somebody that has an infant at home and sleeping 9 hours through the night is maybe not realistic right now, at least shooting for, I'm going to have X amount of total hours as much as possible, or allowing myself to take a nap. Those kinds of things. If you're trying to prioritize sleep, find ways to write your goals that you're able to meet that and to work on that. So those are your, oh, sorry, I almost skipped the T. They're not SMART goals, they're SMART goals. So the T, the last part, is time-based. So what is your time frame to accomplish this goal? So in my case of the running goal, my race is in September. So by September, I want to be able to run a 3:15 marathon. So that's the actual written out goal. When it's a SMART goal, it's specific, it is measurable, attainable, relevant / realistic, and time-based. So give yourself a time frame. So that's where I mentioned when you're writing kind of the measurable piece of it, as well as the time period, that's where you can maybe make an intermediate SMART goal of, in the case of the veggies example, I want to eat at least 400 grams of fruits and veggies a day in 1 month. And then by 2 months from now, I want to be eating 800 grams of fruits and veggies a day, or if you break it up by serving, whatever. But writing yourself a smaller goal to maybe make it helpful to be a little more manageable. So last thing, now tracking your goals. Number one, as you should have been doing as we do this, if you're able to, writing everything down. So write your goals down. It doesn't necessarily need to be on a sticky note on your mirror, but have it somewhere that you can visit again. And honestly, just writing them down, period, goes a long way for one, remembering them. If you don't write them down 6 months from now, you're like, man, I feel like I set some goals at the beginning of the year, but I don't remember what they were. So make sure to write them down. And then for each of them, write down the steps to take to make it happen. So with vegetables, so I'm going to buy the vegetables at the grocery store. I'm going to pick 3 different vegetables to get at the grocery store each week. Talk about, get really specific on what have been my barriers previously to this goal. If your spouse does the cooking and doesn't really incorporate veggies, how do you overcome that barrier? So really thinking through the things that are going to try to derail you, as well as the steps that you need to take to actually make it happen. So if you just have a fitness goal in general of, I have such a hard time getting out the door to work out, I want to be able to work out in the mornings, whether it's going to sleep in your workout clothes or having everything laid out the night before, write down the steps you want to take to make it happen, kind of plan for those barriers, plan for the things that either in the past have derailed you from your goals, or that when you sit down and really think about it, what do you feel like could cause problems in actually making this goal happen? So then from there, once you have all that planned, when something comes up, you've already thought this through. So how you can work past that. And then depending on the goal, doing potentially even a daily check-in or a weekly check-in on your progress. So again, put something in your calendar to actually think through and check in how you're progressing on your goal. Then, and I've already talked about setting your long-term goal and breaking it down into smaller ones if that's more helpful. And then share your goal with somebody to help keep you accountable. There's, I feel like, kind of conflicting evidence out there of some people talk about, don't tell people your goal because if you say it out loud, your brain feels like it already happened, so then you don't work as hard to achieve it. Maybe on some psychological level, that's true, but I think ultimately, if you tell somebody your goal and say, I need help staying accountable on this, what can I help you with? And you can keep each other, even if it's not the same goal, just checking in with each other is really, really helpful. So tell somebody your goal, ask them to help keep you accountable. It's okay to ask for help. This is one of those areas where you're going to have to ask. Somebody can't just assume like, what are your goals for 2021? Let me help you meet them. You need to ask for that. And it's okay to ask for that help. So that's kind of the last piece of tracking it and helping make it happen, is keeping accountable with somebody else is great. So just to review, we'll just quickly run through this stuff and then I'll open it up for questions if you guys have any questions. So taking the inventory when it comes to health-related behaviors, so your nutrition, hydration, physical activity, both just daily movement habits as well as your exercise routine, your sleep habits, stress level, mental wellness, and your work-life balance, ranking them in order of importance. And then for each of them, deciding how ready am I to make a change? 0 being I'm not ready at all, and 10 is I'm completely ready to make that change. And for each area, go through your why questions. Why is this important to me? And then you give your one answer. Well, why is that the case? And then you give that answer. Why is that the case? So really getting to the deeper why of each of those areas. And then if you didn't rank an area 10, meaning you're completely ready to make a change, what do you need to help get you closer to being ready to make that change? Is it more planning, making a commitment, family or friend support, having a coach, whatever it is? Think through it. What's going to help you get there? And then what are the benefits? Again, why is this important? Not only the health benefits that you'll see, so you can think more broad, but also specifically for you, what are the activities or the things that you're maybe limited in because you haven't reached this goal yet? What are your barriers? What's going to hold you back? What's going to derail you? Plan for that. Think about those barriers. And then actually taking the time to sit down and write out your SMART goals. If we're talking again, the health and wellness, pick your top 2 areas to write a specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based goal, and be sure to track them over time. So I am going to open it up to questions. Thank you all for joining me. So I'm going to leave this open. Give me 1 second. I'm also going to pull up the YouTubes to make sure I'm not missing anything there. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions, and feel free, for those of you who are on, you can either put it in the chat for everybody to see, or you can send it to just me to see. Write out your SMART goal. This can be step 1 in basically saying it out loud, if you will, typing it to me to keep yourself accountable. So if you already have a goal in mind, go ahead and put it in the chat and send it to me. And that way it's there. It's out in the world. It's set, not necessarily set in stone, but it's something that you're already wanting to work towards to make that change. It doesn't mean like this has to be it. Take some time to think about it later on, but just something to start working towards. Try to put it in the chat, or in the chat, put the area that you want to work on. Let me know, is it your, do you want to work on your daily habits? Do you want to work on your sleep habits? What's your number 1 area that you want to work on with me? So I'm going to sit here awkwardly, silently, because I want to hear here. I want to see something in the chat. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. I'll be on for another few minutes if anything pops up. But otherwise, I'm going to hang out here, talk to myself for a little bit, give you time to be thinking through these things, and take a sip of water while you're maybe typing in for me to see what area you want to work on this year. It doesn't have to be your SMART goals, but at least type in, the area you want to work on. I'm going to let my dog in because she has been scratching at the door nonstop since I came on here. My little geriatric Shih Tzu. I will introduce you guys to Bailey. Some of you have probably seen her in the videos and things that we do. So this is Bailey in her little sweater. She's been scratching at the door. You probably couldn't hear her, but if you did, this is a tiny 7-pound thing, 13 years old, that has been scratching at the door. So this is Bailey. We're gonna say bye now. All right, so let me see these questions that have come in. Give me 1 second. All right. So yeah, good question. So one of the questions that came in, thoughts about how to approach multiple goals that might kind of compete with each other. For instance, smoking your marathon and also some other like physical activity goal. It's a great point. So it's funny because this year I was actually also training for a powerlifting meet. And when it comes to getting really good in either of those areas, they do kind of compete. So it's a matter of prioritizing, honestly. So depending on the time frame, so in my case, it's because my meet got canceled, I'm more so just kind of lifting for fun. But if anything, it's like the meet got moved to end of March. So I could keep it, harder strength focused for now, focusing on powerlifting, maybe a little bit of running in there. And then know that, okay, I'm going to dedicate that 6 months after my powerlifting meet to just strict running. So typically, if you have kind of competing goals, you do have to think about how to prioritize, because ultimately, if you really want to do well in one of those areas, to be a well-rounded, healthy human, it's good to do a little bit of everything. But if you have a specific goal in an area, whether it's running or lifting or CrossFit, whatever, it is going to take more dedicated training in that area to improve. So it's a matter of prioritizing that. So if it's running, it's going to be running focused, but make sure you're still spending time on some strength training. As if you've been following Movement RX for a while, strength training is important when it comes to injury prevention for things. So, having to some degree that well-rounded fitness, but knowing there is going to be a focus in that, time-based goal that you've set for yourself. So depending on the timing of things, and of course, who knows, things can still change if life is going to get canceled in 2021 again. So knowing that it's important to be flexible too. But basically it comes down to, for this, whatever time period you give yourself, if you're training for a specific something, I'm going to get ready for it in these months. And then, you can kind of have it as a separate goal. I'm going to get ready for this other thing, and it just shifts focus. But yeah, generally, if you have competing goals, pick which is more important to you, or what is more pressing time-wise if it has to do with like a race or a competition, and write your goal based on the time or the priority. Good question. So specific ideas about motivation with regards to goals. That's a great question. So that's where it's really important to take the time to think through the different areas. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the things we talked about today. Those are just examples of health-related goals and the areas to work on. But picking goals that are actually meaningful to you is what's going to help with the motivation. Like I said, if there's a disconnect with where you're ready to make a change versus what's actually meaningful to you, finding ways to stay motivated, whether that's, social support, finding a group that's working towards the same thing. Having a coach is another way. I know for me, to stay accountable and to keep working hard towards my goals, coaches need coaches. I know a lot about running. I know a lot about run training, but it's also helpful to have another set of eyes, another expert working with you on your goals. Invest in yourself. So I know a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I want to do all this on my own, or I don't have money to put towards this. Well, see what you can. If it's something that you want to make a priority, it may mean investing in yourself in some way, whether that's getting a coach or joining a group. So if you're doing it on your own, I think that's where having somebody else to help you keep accountable is important, to stay motivated, and just finding ways to make it fun, depending on what your goal is. Like, try to make a game out of it of, if it's number of hours a night that you sleep, reward yourself with, whatever you enjoy doing. If you hit that 6 out of the 7 nights a week. So see if you can gamify your goal in some way of making it fun, giving yourself a reward in some way. of, oh, I never watch TV, but I'm gonna let myself watch a movie. And this is not the case for me, but whatever it is, of maybe something that you don't normally do that's always been kind of a treat for you, to help you reach that goal. Obviously, don't necessarily build new bad habits, but however you feel like you can make it fun to stay motivated. So between making it a game for yourself, as well as having somebody else help keep you accountable, those are two of the main ways I would say are helpful to stay motivated. The other thing also just being that you're making sure you're picking a goal that you feel like is relevant, that you truly do want to make a change. Because if you're just doing it because you feel like you should, but really you have no motivation to make a change there, then you shouldn't necessarily be making that goal, or plan on making smaller ones, like really chunking it down and making it much smaller so it's kind of more fun to meet those goals along the way. First priority goal is to reduce fat content in my daily consumption. That's awesome. Peanut butter mainly, so that as a type 1 diabetic, I can better stabilize my blood sugar. That's great. So that's a great kind of start to writing your SMART goal. That's very specific, which is awesome, and talking about why it's important to you. And so then when you take that information from your kind of planning session, if you will, then making it measurable, kind of giving yourself the amounts of fat that you feel are okay for your diet, and then going from there, and then giving yourself a time frame of when you want to meet that goal. Good habit book to recommend. Yeah, that's a really good question. There's so many out there. The first one that comes to mind that I think is really helpful is Atomic Habits. I don't remember the author off the top of my head, but Atomic Habits is a really great one, because I think that's really helpful in making those small changes. And it talks about how those small changes add up to be big things over time. So if there was one I would recommend on habits, that would probably be the main one, because I think it's helpful also when we think about goal setting and changing habits. It can be very overwhelming on a big scale. So that one talks about how making these little changes over time make a big difference. Good question. All right. So thank you all for joining me. If moving forward you guys have any questions for us, don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach us at wellness, all one word, at movement-rx.com. Well, let me put that in. Yes, James Clear, thank you, is the author of the Atomic Habits book. That just popped up in the chat. So let me put our email address in here. And so if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And like I said, if you need a little more time to marinate on all of this, be sure to watch the replay. It'll be a few days before we have it up and running, but this will be available to you to watch again if you need a little more time to let things soak in. But hopefully you were able to take notes along the way, that you have enough to think about, that if you didn't get it all done in this session, take some time right after this, if you have it, to brainstorm and actually write your goals down. I'm really excited for you guys to be able to implement this and reach your goals for 2021. This is an exciting year. So far, still off to a little bit of a rocky start, kind of a hangover from 2020, but we'll get there. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I am very excited to see what this year holds. So thank you all for joining.